Hi everybody, welcome to the Week 16 test. We're going to go over solving equations to start with. And remember, whether you're doing this because you want to understand the math better, which is hopefully the reason why, or you're doing it because you want to understand the math better and you want to be more prepared for the next test, whatever your reasons are, these are good videos to watch to get you ready to better understand this work. All right, so let's jump in. In this first problem, we are asked to solve the equation x minus 28 equals 64. One of the things that I've recommended you do is that you change all your equations into addition equations. Now, you don't have to do this, and I'm sure there's some really good mathematicians out there that don't do this, but my experience has been, as a first step, this really helps students who are learning how to solve equations. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this line down the center, because what that line reminds me is that whatever I do on one side of the equation, I have to do on the other. The equal sign tells us right now everything's balanced. So even though we don't know what x equals, whatever it is, when you add negative 28, you get 64. So if I do something on the left side, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add positive 28. I'm going to add that because when you add positive 28 to negative 28, you get all these zero pairs. All of that cancels out, and it gives me x by myself. And that's what I want to know is how much is x? The dotted line reminds me that when I added that 28 to the left, I also needed to add 28 to the right. I need to do the same thing on both sides. So when I add these together now, 64 plus 28, well, let's see, 4 and 8 is 12, so there's a 2, carry a 1. 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 2 more, 92. So I'm saying x equals 92. Now, I told you you needed to include a check. So before I write my answer in that final box, I'm going to check it. How can I check my work? How can I check this? Well, what I can do is I can go back to the original equation, x minus 28 equals 64. So I'll write that right here. X take away 28 equals 64. That's the equation I'm checking. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 92 in place of the x, because I'm saying 92 take away 28 equals 64. Then I'm going to actually do that. 92 take away 28. I have to borrow from the 9, so that becomes an 8. I regroup a 1 over here. 1 and 12 now, minus 8 is 4. 8 minus 2 is 6. That 64 is the same as that 64 I was trying to get. I have done the problem correctly, and I can confidently write 92 as my answer. So again, the steps are rewrite as addition, then put the dashed line down through the equal sign. Remind yourself to do the same thing on both sides. Add the 28 to the left to cancel out the negative 28. Add it to the right, because you have to do the same thing on both sides. And then once you have your answer, which in this case was 92, go ahead and check your work. All right, on to the next problem. So in problem 2, Sophia was given $18 for doing her weekly chores. And I asked you on these problems to write an equation. What would the equation look like to solve this problem? Sophia was given $18 for doing her weekly chores. Now she has $55. How much did she start with? So we're going to use x as the starting amount. What I'm doing right now, writing this out, that's called defining a variable. It's letting everybody who looks at this problem know what the x stands for. So here's the starting amount that Sophia had. She was given $18. So you have to add in the 18. And now she has $55. Once I have that equation, I'm going to do everything I did on the last problem. There's my dashed reminder line. I'm adding 18. The opposite of that is to add negative 18. Doing that gives me right here 18 zero pairs. All those things cancel out. I'm left with x equals something. Since I added negative 18 here on the left, I have to add negative 18 on the right. Now, when I add a negative, let me block out some space to work here. When I add a negative, adding a negative is like subtracting a positive amount. So I can think of that as 55 take away 18. That's the same as 55 plus negative 18. So I'm going to regroup. Now I've got 15 take away 8 is 7, and 4 take away 1 is 3. And I'm saying that Sophia started with $37. I'm going to check that work. Remember again, if you check before you turn it in and it's wrong, you can fix it and it's never really wrong. It was just along the way. There were some people, when they did their corrections on their notes, they wrote themselves, be sure to check, because they didn't get the right answer. And had they checked, they'd have known that it wasn't right. So in this case, I'm going to check by taking that equation, x plus 18 equals 55. I'm going to substitute in the 37. So I'm going to say, does 37 plus 18 equal 55? Well, let's see. 37 and 18, 7 and 8 is 15. Carry a 1. 1 and 3 is 4, plus 1 more is 5. There's the $55 Sophia ended up with. And I can confidently go down to the bottom then and say Sophia started with $37. All right, to the next batch. We're doing the same thing again. And I told you I like to take these problems and move them over a little bit so there's some room to work around them. So we're doing the same thing again. We're solving by doing opposites. There's my reminder line. The opposite of x divided by 6 would be times 6. I'm going to make that 6 over 1 on that side because I learned fractions times fractions. On this side, it's going to be 15 times 6. The way that I know I did this correctly is those cross-cancel to 1. If I put the right number in, that'll always cancel to 1, and I'll have 1 times x equals x. Over here, 15 times 6, well, let me just do that work. 15 times 6. 6 times 5 is 30, carry a 3. 6 times 1 is 6, 3 makes 9. I get 90 as my answer. Again, I need to check my work. In this case, checking my work is taking 90 and dividing it by 6 and seeing if it equals 15. So I'll do that right down here. 90 divided by 6. 6 goes into 9 one time. That's 6. 3 left over. Bring the 0 down. 6 goes into 30 15 times. Look at that. And I can confidently write the answer of 90 right there. All right. Next equation solving. This is all the same kind of idea. Pacent Middle School has 160 chairs to place in 5 classrooms. Each classroom gets the same number of chairs. That's really important. That statement right there, each classroom gets the same number of chairs. That tells us that we can use division here, because division is the process we use when we have a number like 160 and we're splitting it up evenly. In this case, we're splitting it into 5 groups. So what is 160 times 5? Well, 160 divided by 5. 5 goes into 16 3 times. That's 15. 1 left over. Bring down the 0. 5 goes into 10 2 times. That's exactly 10. My answer is 32. How do I check that? Well, I check by doing the 32 times 5. Does that equal 160? And don't just write the check out there and put a smiley face and go, yep, must be. Actually do it. Maybe you have to do it on paper. I'm going to do it on my digital paper here for everybody to see. Maybe you do it in your head, although I wouldn't recommend that a lot. But do it to actually use the check process. So 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. 1 more makes 16. Yep, 160. Yay for me. I know, remember now, the 160 isn't my answer. The 160 was how many chairs. There's my answer. I know that at Pacent Middle School, they put 32 chairs in each of those 5 classrooms. All right, on to the next problem. Let the fun continue. So now we are going to simplify. And remember, the simplify process means we're making it easier to understand. When we're done, we want as few terms as possible. Right now we've got a bunch of stuff, but we're going to narrow that down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my rainbows. That's my reminder that when I see -3 parentheses all of this stuff, what it means is take the -3, multiply it by the 9x. Then take the -3, multiply it by the 15. If there was another thing inside the parentheses, let's say there was also a plus 6y, it'd be -3 times that 6y. But we've done everything in the parentheses, and so now what we have left is the 4x. We'll go through the process. -3 times 9 is 27, so -3 times 9x is -27x, plus -3 times 15 is -45, plus 4x. Now remember, I use the parentheses to keep the negative away from the plus sign. Some students just write the negative really up high so it looks like a negative, not a minus sign. You can do it either way. This is how I was taught. This is how I think it's easiest for students to understand. You're never going to get graded on which way you choose. Just make sure you don't get them confused. Just make sure you're not confusing any negative signs with subtraction signs. All right, for my next step, I get to go through now and I get to combine the things that are similar. And here's what's similar. I have -27x's and I have +4x's. Those are the same kind of thing. So I can put them together. And what I'm thinking, I'm going to do my right over here. What I'm thinking is, what's -27 plus 4? Well, when I add -27 and 4, they don't combine, they cancel. Since one's negative and one's positive, they cancel each other out. These 4 positives cancel out 4 of the negatives. And when you cancel 4 negatives out, there are 23 negatives left. So 23x, -23x. Plus, there's nothing to cancel out or combine with the -45 ones. So we're left with that. And we have 2 ways we could write this solution. One is what I just wrote, -23x plus -45. Or a lot of mathematicians like to eliminate negatives in their answer if possible. So you can't do it with the -23x, but instead of adding a -45, you could subtract a +45. This is or. This is or. Either one of those would be considered a correct answer. All right, on to number 6. We're finding perimeter. Perimeter is when you add up all the sides. So the formula we've used for perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Because you have 2 of these lengths. You have a 2x plus 4y there, and you also have a 2x plus 4y right here. So you have that length twice. The width of this, you have 9x minus 2y there, and you have 9x plus -2y here. You'll notice I changed it over to adding a negative because that's what I'm going to use when I come down here to do the work. So I have 2 times 2x plus 4y. That takes care of both of these. And then I'm going to add, I think I'll change up my colors here. I'm going to add 2 times 9x plus, and I like, again, to use those parentheses, -2y. I need to make sure I have enough parentheses. So what I've decided to do right now, just to make this stand out, is I'm going to do that work, all the work I do on that part, I'll do it in the purple. So here I've got 2 times 2x, 2 times 4y. 2 times 2x is 8x plus, 8x. I was thinking ahead. You knew as soon as I said it that I said it wrong. 2 times 2x is 4x. There we go. And 2 times 4y, that's where I was thinking 8, is 8y plus 2 times 9x is 18x plus, that's my 2 times 9x. Now I've got my 2 times negative 2y. 2 times negative 2y is negative 4y. All right. Now I can combine the x's. So I have 4x's plus I have another 18x's. Those are both positive, so those combine into 22x's plus I can combine the y's. I have positive 8y and negative 4y. So positive 8 and negative 4, those are not going to combine. Those are going to cancel. 8 positives and 4 negatives leaves me with 4 positives. And my final answer is 22x plus 4y. On to the back of the test. So in this problem, number 7, what you're asked to do is identify the expressions that have the same value as this target expression. So the first thing we need to do is solve the target. 7 squared is 49. Minus 1 is 48. So what we're looking for is we're looking for equations that are equal to 48. The first equation we're given, 7x minus 2y. Well, x is 8, so that's 7 times 8 minus y is 4 minus 2 times 4. 7 times 8 is 56. 2 times 4 is 8. 56 minus 8 is 48. A is correct. This expression, 7x minus 2y, when x is 8 and y is 4, is the same value-wise as 7 squared minus 1. Next expression, a squared, where a is 5, so 5 squared plus 23 is equal to 25 plus 23 is also equal to 48. So that's another one that works. The last expression, 3m, where m is 9, so 3 times 9, plus 3n, where n is 6, 3 times 6. 3 times 9 is 27. 3 times 6 is 18. 27 and 18 is 45. That does not work, and the correct answers are A and B. All right, we are on to the last problem. So here we go. So the distance a car travels can be found by evaluating the expression r times t, where r is the rate the car is traveling. That's the speed that the car travels. And t is the amount of time the car travels. So this is a pretty standard expression. Distance equals rate times time. And that makes sense. How far you go depends on how fast you go, your speed, and how long you drive. In this case, they are telling us that the r value is 45 miles. It travels at 45 miles per hour, so r is 45. And the t value is 5 hours. That's how long they drive. They drive for 5 hours. So we're going to take this expression, r times t, and we're going to have 45 times 5. So 45 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 makes 22. That equals 225. So we're saying that they're going to drive 225 miles. We're saying that is our answer. Well, we've been spending this whole test doing checks. So let's not stop now. How would we check to see if that's true? Well, you always check multiplication by dividing. If you took that 225 and you divide it by 5, you could divide by 45, but this is going to be easier. You need to get the 45. So 5 goes into 22 4 times. That's 20. 2 left over, bring the 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times. So there we have all three parts of our problem. Notice here it was 45 times 5 makes 225. And here it's 225 divided by 5 makes 45. We did that correct. Nice job remembering to check. And we can be confident of our 225 answer. All right, let me scroll down and we'll hit this last problem. They ask you, which equation in solution represents the following scenario? Brooke earns $15 each week for doing her chores. How many weeks will it take for Brooke to earn $105? So we know that she's working $15, or she's getting $15 for each week. There's the correct expression. She's getting the number of weeks times $15, and it has to equal 105. And our correct answer is B. All right, so you've taken time to watch the video. Take some extra time, study for that next test, the week 17 test. A lot of this information will be on 17. And do that study so that when you come in and sit down for the test, you don't feel nervous. You feel prepared and ready to go. All right, if you have any other questions, be sure to ask.